West, y'all.
How you guys doing?
What up?
Now, we have Aynsley here now. She runs the popular blog Sippingkoko. And we have Lani here, who is a cultural strategist for a company that helps film and TV. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And brands.
And we're here to talk about the HBO series that came out earlier this year, The White Lotus. Now, I know you two have done a recent Instagram Live about The White Lotus, the TV series. So, can you guys just talk about how you guys met and how you guys came up with this idea of talking about this TV series in your Instagram Live?
Yes. So, should we talk about how we met? Our origin story?
Yep.
So I slid into Aynsley's DMs because I'm currently developing a series, Okay Love You, which is with an Afakasi lead and telling the Afakasi narrative from the Midwest here in the States. And so we have a mutual friend, Taufia Pelasasa, who is a filmmaker based out of Sydney. And so Fia introduced me to Aynsley because there are only so many Midwest Afakasis out there, or Southern Afakasis. And so I immediately had to go check out Aynsley on Instagram, got in those DMs, and we set up a chat, got to know each other. All of a sudden, it was like 3 hours went by. We're still talking, immediately hit it off. And now we're, working together, collaborating on project ideas, scripts, and this is just the beginning of that. And of course, anything Pacifica out there, we have opinions about if it's coming, especially from US entertainment. We've got our eyes like watching what's happening, what HBO is doing, what Disney Plus is doing. So when the White Lotus was talked about heavily, me and Aynsley had opinions, and so we're like, okay, let's share this on Instagram Live. Let's continue this narrative and talk about what we can do to make this a larger conversation, not just about the main themes around white privilege of the show, but how do we talk about the Native Hawaiian Pacifica themes that were just brushed over? Like, how do we make this a bigger moment?
Yeah. I have always, like, we talked about this, like, in our, like, just, like, in general, her and I have just been chatting, and, like, something that's, like, starting to be circulating, I feel like, our community more, is, like, this idea of how we're portrayed in the masses. And so, like, for some reason, people have been having the caucasity to start using more and more of our, like, songs, and when I say our, I mean us as a collective, because like, we're both Afakasi Samoans, we're not Hapa. I think that's what they say for half Hawaiian. And so, like, when I say our, I say as in a, like, a brotherly, sisterly kind of love, because we know that they have their own voices as well. And so, like, I just, with both of us living here on the continent, we also just want to raise awareness, because we both did, like she said, come from the Midwest. The history that we were told was basically this, like, little happy-go-lucky, like, oh yay, we got our 50th state, like, in 1950 something, like that. Like, I think people on the continent do not realize how close to home and how still alive people are that remember the stolen heritage, the stolen, like, lands that the Hawaiian people had to go through. Like, there's still pain and suffering that is happening, that is, like, trickled down from, like literally so, like so close. Like, it's not even like we can't say, like, oh, that happened a long time ago. No. This happened, like, just a few years ago, and so, like, the fact that, like, it just happened a few years ago, and that, like, with all the social justice talks that have been happening in the most recent years, it's very important that we, like, start raising awareness, start getting the Pacifica voice, like, very loud on this continent, because we see it's loud in, like, in our homelands, or, like, where our people have a pretty decent loud voice. It's still not represented well, even in New Zealand or Australia, but they are seeing a little bit more than they are here in America. So I think like me and Lani just have this passion and this drive to ensure that like we have the capabilities. We see women, especially like Pacifica women, doing the damn thing. Am I allowed to cuss on this?
Yeah.
Okay, doing the damn thing. And like we just want to be like, if they're able to do it, so can we. And we want to also enable other Pacifica creatives to have the power, to have the passion and drive to show what we are. We don't want to play into these stereotypes like that the White Lotus or other TV shows are perpetrating. So I don't even know if perpetrating so is the right word. But yeah, so like we just were like, you know what, let's start working. Like I know like I've been advocating on my blog, but I always love it when it's a group effort. I come from a background of playing on basketball teams, so did Lani. Like it's always better when it's a teamwork. And when you look at other communities like the Asian community, the Black community, there's a reason why the Asian dollar, why the Black dollar still doesn't circulate as much as it should in their community. Big Mike on Netflix has a episode about that. I think it's Big Mike. I don't know. I can't. I'll have to DM me. But you know, there's just like the talks about how are we circulating the Pacifica dollar? You know, like how are we circulating our media? How are we getting our voices raised? Those are the things that we're passionate about and want to like, you know, let's go, let's do the thing. You know. I'm not as articulate as Lani is.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Because that brings me to what Lani does for work. So you're a cultural strategist. Are you seeing more of the Pacifica lens over there in the States in regards to film and TV?
So there's appetite. So it's interesting when I work with different networks, shows, films, there is an appetite to tell the Pacifica story. I really applaud NBC and Young Rock for at least wanting and investing in a story that is leading with someone who is Pacifica. But I will critically look at the way they do it, and I have not yet seen it done well, I will say, to where I watch it, I'm like, that got my culture. Like that, like I could tell that there were Pacifica people and creatives in the writers' rooms. There's always just something off. And that is, I think, we have a starting point. So that's the good thing. But we need more Pacifica creators and creatives like me and Aynsley, and there's so many of us out here in the States to actually be in the writers' rooms. And I really cannot stress that enough. That's where we need to start because a lot of my job, I come in on the promotional end. So I'm already given a show or film, and then I am tasked with marketing it to what the industry calls multicultural audiences, but it's essentially the new general market. By 2042, actually, here in the US, we will be a minority majority country, which is crazy. So here in the US, we will be majority not white or European American. We'll be majority Black, Brown, Asian, Latinx. And so there's this demand for more diverse storytelling. And in fact, multiracial people in the US doubled in growth. And this was reported by the census this year. So there is a demand for multiracial stories, for person of color stories. There's been a whole renaissance, but there has yet to be the Pacifica story renaissance here in the US. And I am looking forward to the day when, and I think that me and Aynsley and other filmmakers, Pacifica filmmakers over here in the US will be leading it, but to where networks are respecting our culture and allowing us and supporting us to tell our own stories versus them taking our stories and having the privilege or thinking that they can just take it out of our hands and tell it themselves without including us. And that's the big issue.
With the White Lotus TV series, I'll come to you, Aynsley. When you first watched it, what was your thoughts or what was your first feelings on how the story on Pacifica?
So my lens when I start watching something is if it's based in any of our islands, how many of us are actually on screen? Like that's kind of like just right off the bat. I'm in marketing, so like I'm kind of like a visual person, especially in my marketing team, and so I visualize it. And so like when I first saw the White Lotus, I was like, where are we? Like where are our people? And that first episode, one person out of probably
Lani.
a cast of 20. Lani was her name. And you know what really got me was that Lani wasn't necessarily a strong character. She was only in there for one episode. And so like when I first watched that very first episode, I was just like, everything in me, anytime I watch something that I can tell is not written by one of our people, I'm just like I already have like tension. And I tried to tell myself, give it a chance. Let's see what happens. Maybe they're the creators that actually did take the time, because I think back to Finding Ohana, that director, I don't know about the writer, but I know the director for sure had the autonomy on set that like if something wasn't correct, she wanted the actors who were Hawaiian to tell her, who were Pacifica. That movie right there is a very good fusion of American Pacifica storytelling. It wasn't necessarily directed by us, but we had the autonomy to like be present. And so like when I watched White Lotus, I was like, okay, maybe this one wasn't. And then the way they used the songs, like are what I would deem as like sacred songs, just killed me a little bit inside, because it just felt like it was pandering, or just in there to be like, well, look, we put it in the show. You know, we just did this for y'all. And so I just did not like it right off the bat. Like I was just very much, I liked the story. Story is great. Just how we're represented in the show is awful. And that's kind of like what my first thoughts were when I watched it, because I was like, gosh darn it, like it's 2021 for goodness sakes. Like I get that we don't have a loud voice here in America, but for goodness sakes, can you at least try? Like, can you just do something where it's not like a stereotype, or just like you just threw us in there to be like, we concluded y'all? Like, that's just my thing about the whole show.
How about you, Lani? What was your thoughts on the initial reaction there?
It was interesting because it evolved each episode how I felt about it. And it was almost like a toothache. At the beginning, I felt discomfort. I was like, something's not right here. Oh, bye, Ames. Something's not right here. And even Lani, when we were introduced to that character, her discomfort, I could feel so deeply. And I was like, okay, where are they taking this character? Where are they taking this narrative? And then throughout the show, it was like intensified pain. Like I felt pain towards the end of it. And it felt like pain because the two Pacifica characters, Lani and Kai, their stories were started and there was an opportunity to tell a Pacifica story and strengthen the larger theme around white privilege. It's a dark satire. I thought that it was overall well scripted. The story structure was great. Mike White, the creator, obviously knows what he's doing. He's a practiced filmmaker. So I have no beef about that. But what's sad is that there was an obvious blind spot about the way they were portraying Native Hawaiian culture. And the carelessness is where the pain came from, because to end Lani's narrative in that way and never circle back on it. Also, Kai. Where's Kai? Hashtag bring Kai back, because that character was just cut off and done so bad. It was so painful to see that dynamic between him and Paula. And like that's something Aynsley and I could talk about for days is Kai as a character. But I truly do, just overall, it was uncomfortable and painful to watch the Pacifica narrative be so carelessly told throughout the show. And one other thing I'll say about it real quick is it was sad to see the show be about white privilege, but then by existing, it was in itself white privilege because it was exploiting our culture, our Pacifica culture, and in particular, Hawaiian culture, in order to achieve their objectives of telling their dark satire about white privilege. So it was these layers of white privilege in this show. And I know we can do better. And what I would urge is that this is just the beginning. So great, we told the white privilege side. Now, if I were HBO and if I was Mike White, the creator, I would now then hand off the part 2 to the Pacifica community so that we can continue on the story and then tell our perspective of the situation that they have put out there through the show.
The theme of white privilege does pop up a lot, especially with that family, the Mosbacher family, them and Shane, the character Shane Pennon,
Shane.
their rich husband. But do you think that the message of white privilege mixed in with what we're talking about, Pacifica culture? Because when I remember that scene when the Mosbacher family having dinner and they're discussing the stolen land.
Yeah.
And Paula was there, and she was into Kai by then, and she was sort of seeing the dark side of it. Do you think that wasn't enough message there? Because I think that's been a common message every time Hawaiians are shown on film. So, like how you're saying how there's an opportunity for the story to expand into the story of Kai or Lani in the beginning. There was a missed opportunity there. With the work that you do, are you seeing more of that sort of narrative come out into film? You talked about an appetite in the beginning of this podcast. How much of that appetite is out there now?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the appetite is, quite frankly, around objectifying Hawaiian culture. So think about like shows and films where it's like, yes, it's in Hawaii, but it's like a hot lifeguard or a hula girl. Even things like 51st Dates or Hawaii Five-0. It's this white version of Hawaii that is romanticized, sexualized, objectified. And so we have a go-to narrative and it sells. It sells. People love a good hot Hawaiian story, but unfortunately that has become one of the only narratives out there when the Hawaiian culture and Hawaii and Pacifica culture overall is so multidimensional, so diverse, so nuanced that we're only telling a fraction, not even a fraction. It's like we barely scratched the surface here when it comes to our culture, but mainstream entertainment has clung on to this version of like objectifying, like fetishizing Hawaiian culture. And unfortunately, yeah, the numbers prove out people love that content, but there's a responsibility there, I think, for filmmakers and studios out there today to tell a more multidimensional story. And so that's what I mean by appetite as well. Like, yes, they're interested, but now it's time to go deeper.
I'm thinking about Taika Waititi and he's sort of bust through into the mainstream
Right.
sort of thing, and he's producing his own movies, and he's putting his brown faces on the screen. Probably not talking about the culture as much, but he's putting his content out there for us to enjoy.
I think for like what Taika does is that like he gives us like different stories, but they're not like your typical like, oh, we just came from the islands, this immigrant story. It's like a literal like Boy. Boy is about a boy whose father is in jail, and he creates up this entire narrative for his father. Like, who you can show that, you can show Boy to like almost any cultural group, and they'll connect with it in some way possible. Now, there's going to be some jokes in there that obviously we are only going to get, but you also have, like, I remember, I don't know who I was talking to. I was here at work, and someone was telling me about Hunt for the Wilder People, how much they loved that movie. And I was like, oh my God, did you know that Taika, and I obviously went on my spiel, but it's just like Hunt of the Wilder People, it's not, technically like, it's not necessarily like a Pacifica story. It just has a story that relates for everyone across the board, but features Pacifica people in their own like land. Um, so like I like think that's wonderful, but like what Lonnie was talking about, like with like our diversity and whatnot, like we're not just a monolith. We're not just like surfers. We're not just like hula girls or resort boys, if you want to put it that way, like Kai was. He was known as like a pool boy essentially. Um, like our stories are multidimensional. We have people that like you're a podcast host. Lonnie works in a cultural diverse industry. I'm a marketing major. We have people who are filmmakers. We have people who are like, our people are so diverse. We have authors, we have screenwriters, we have scientists now, we have lawyers. I mean, our stories are so multidimensional. We're not a monolith. And like with the White Lotus, why couldn't Armand's, is it Armand's character, why couldn't it have been played by a
Armand.
Pacific Islander? Like, I'm sure we got Pacific Islanders who could have easily done the whole, like drug addicted hotel manager, like we could have had a mixed race couple. Imagine that. And that would have also displayed white privilege within a relationship, you know? And so like there's just different things that could have happened, because like what would have been really cool, I mean, they did that with, I guess, Paula and Kai, but what would have been really neat to see the dynamic if, like, say, like Kai married a white woman, something that like is very prevalent in our community that's been talked about, how Polynesian guys hate on Polynesian women. And like, like what if happened if like we had Kai be kind of like that typical Polynesian guy who hate on Polynesian women, and him and Lani had a run in because of his white privilege in marrying a white woman. Like, there's that story that could have been explored easily. So yeah, I just think that like if you're going to put us in a certain spot, try to include one of the like at least one person from our community in the writer's room.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, with the message of the movie in terms of Pacifica stories and our culture, there's gonna be a spoiler alert for everyone. But at the end, the conclusions for each of the storylines. So for the family, for each of the characters, in your guys' eyes, who do you think were the winners and losers in terms of our stories? Because when I think of the character, is it Quinn, the son? How he stayed behind?
Mm-hmm.
He's more like the innocent dude, out of everybody. So he's sort of lost, but found connection to the Hawaiian people on the beach, and he decides to stay and become one with the people, if you know what I mean.
Well, it was interesting, his character, how there was a moment where nature took his devices. So, the ocean literally swallowed his Nintendo Switch or phone or whatever. And so he was left without artificial connection, left without technology, man made something. And so he was kind of forced to reconnect to the culture, or nature at least, and get a little bit of that indigenous spirit. But this is something that I question, and I also see an opportunity to make a bigger conversation about, is a character like Quinn who loves the culture. So he was like really into, the Hawaiian culture, and was like, oh no, I want to stay here because I feel accepted. Like, I love the way it makes me feel. But do you love the culture, okay, great. But now do you love the people? So there's a difference between the two. People can get really caught up in the culture of people and the community. Um, but then at the end of the day, are you going to stand up for those people when they're in trouble? Are you going to be there for Pacifica people? And with Quinn and the little bit of time that we saw him in the show, it's like he was enchanted with Hawaiian culture, which who isn't? I mean, it's why there's so much objectification of it throughout entertainment today. But I hope that he takes the time to truly get to know Hawaiian people and the Kanaka Maoli, and because and it's just commentary on so many people who come to Hawaii and want to stay, because like why wouldn't you? But they're not staying for the right reasons. They're not respecting the land. Maybe they go to University of Hawaii, they party, they have fun, but then they go back home. And so he has an opportunity to actually care about the people. But the way the show has portrayed it, it's like I think he was just enchanted by the culture and the feeling that the people give off, if that
He
makes
was riding
sense.
a mountain high.
Hmm.
He was just riding a mountain high and wanting to, like, his devices gave him a high, and so once they got washed away, he was just finding the next high. So what happens when he loses that high? So he's just gonna ditch. Like we can't ditch our people. We can't ditch our culture. We can't ditch our voices. So like that's the thing with white privilege, is like they come to us and they get this high, and then they can leave, and then they just keep coming back in and out using us for this high, and that they're not doing anything to actually help us. They're not. They say like, oh look, we gave you Moana. What like we gave you that. And I'm like, no, you didn't give it to us. We aided you in telling our story, but you did not give us anything. Because if you gave us something, you would actually respect us throughout the rest of your other productions. So like that's how I see Quinn, I think is what we've been saying his name is. Is that he like came for the high, but once it gets to be a struggle, like what happens if like, one of those brothers like needed him to help needed his voice to help like with like Mauna Kea, is he going to stand against the police, or is he going to turn and run? So like that's how I see Quentin, is he's at like the other characters were terrible, but to me Quentin is probably the worst in a way, just because they love to use our culture for their high.
Yeah, I really felt that, especially with the Mosbaka family. But the other character, Paula, now, in you guys' eyes, like, what has Paula learned? And what has the story sort of filtered in her way? Because she's the one that she got with Kai, and she was told his story, his side of the story about the land being taken, so that message came through. In terms of her character, what do you think she has learned at the end?
Oh wow, Paula. Should
Yeah.
I start, Aynsley? I mean, we could talk about Paula for
Paula
days
and
over
Kai
here.
just like really grind our gears right now.
Yeah, it's a sore subject with us. But I can start by saying that Paula, to me, is a bridge character. So she's one of those characters who is able to see. So okay, if she's a bridge and there are two plots of land that the bridge is connecting. One of them is European, specifically European American. I'll go as far as to say the colonizer side, which is brought to life through the hotel guests. And then there is the indigenous side, the other side of the bridge. So Native Hawaiian that they portray in the show. She is able to see both sides, and she is, that's the story of her evolution, her growth throughout the series, or the first season. And so at first, she's fully on the colonizer side. She's feeling accepted by it. But then she has this flipping the switch moment when she realizes that Olivia, her Palangi friend, doesn't actually care about her. She's actually just trying to own her and tell her what to do because her friend is white, and that's a considered cultural possession through whiteness. Especially when this girl Olivia hit on Kai at the luau, and then Paula was like, "Okay, can't trust a girl." Um, and so that to me was like a flipping moment for her. And then she had an understanding and empathy for the indigenous side, was understanding, oh, like this is neo-colonization happening. Like this is, a European American group and family I'm a part of that is culturally exploiting another culture. So I good for her for the awareness that she reached. And the moment that I think she truly did that too was at the dinner where the family's talking about imperialism, and Olivia's like, well, Paul is uncomfortable in this way, but this is also, and I think actually pretty brilliant that Mike White set it up this way, because we have empathy for her, but then the way she treated Kai to me was commentary on how also you can use activism as a form of forced agenda and not doing what's truly best for a culture at the end of the day. So she was mad, and so she was like, okay, you should steal Kai because this family's stealing your culture and exploiting it. But she was pushing her own agenda. Kai never once was like, oh, I want to do it in this way. I don't want to fight back in this way. And there's so many different ways we can fight back. There, you can fight back in a man-made colonizer way, or you can fight back through spirit and indigenous power. And you can tell that that is what he was leaning more toward. And so really we saw Paula exercising her colonizer mindset. Even though she is a bridge character, she still has that mindset where she's like, well, I'm going to go back home. We can't date. I have to go back to college, where she thinks she can just take from Hawaii and then leave. That's my hot take on Paula. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have such beef with women who enter into our community and date our men. And then I think that's what really bothered me, and maybe what maybe triggered me just a little bit, was the fact that, like, there are sometimes these women that just love to come into our community and think by just pure osmosis, this is what I've been saying, pure osmosis, they have rights to our culture and to whatever. And so that's like what I've had a problem with Paula's character. Like, I get she struggles as well, but honey, you don't have anything to our culture. You don't understand it. You didn't take the time to learn it. And until you do that, just sit down and shut the fuck up, please. And like, there are women who have entered into our community from the outside, who have done the work. They know the language better than some of us. They literally are uplifting our voices and being like, look, I'm here to support you. I'm not going to take anything from you. I'm not going to take space up. I am literally here to ensure that my children, who I will have, know where they came from. I am here to also uplift your voice. I am a woman who supports women. I'm not just a selective woman who supports women until, like, it makes me uncomfortable and I can't wear your tattoo or your traditional tattoos. And so, like, to me, that is who Paula resembled to me, was the kind of women, and I hate to generalize, but majority of our men sometimes just love to love, because they're like, oh, they're easy. They're easy to, like, allow me to not have to deal with the culture, to not have to deal with the hard stuff. I'll tell the story of our people, but I'm not actually going to deal with it. I'm going to take the easy way out. Which also annoyed me, the fact that the White Lotus did that too, because, like, we're still dealing with that. Like, we're still having these conversations within our community, you know? Like, that's not necessarily a story that they had the right to tell. Like, we as a people are still trying to say, like, do people from the outside of our community have rights to our culture, to the Tatao? I know I'm bringing another issue in here, but it's just like, that stuff, that's a sensitive topic that, unless you truly understand it, maybe don't tell that story. You can tell a different story. That's okay. But, that's just those are just the layers that Paula brought up for me, which is why her character really, really annoyed me, because I was like, oh, you're that woman that comes onto my blog page and says, well, my children are Samoan. Why can't I have a tattoo? And I'm like, bitch, you just can't. I'm sorry. Like, you don't have the rights. You didn't, just because you popped out a child doesn't mean you can just automatically get a tattoo. Like, I'm an Afakasi woman growing up in the United States wondering, do I have rights to my own culture? Do you know, like, how that annoying that is? And so, like, that's what Paula triggered for me as a Pacifica woman, watching her date a Pacifica man. And that's just a lot of layers to unpack, and it's going to go beyond the White Lotus. But, you know, that's just some of the thoughts that went through my mind when I would see her and be like, oh, yeah, just go steal some stuff. And how about you? I don't know. You're going to college, right, Paula? Why don't you write a letter to the governor? Why don't you write a letter to the president? Why don't you use that college education to do something better than going and stealing? Just some thoughts. Anyways,
so in
yeah. So
summary,
Paula just really annoyed me.
yeah, Paula, look at your feet because you overstepped on the culture.
Yeah.
That's what we think, Cam.
Wow, that's deep. That's deep, ladies. Oh, well, that's cool. That's cool. I never thought of it that way. The other character on the program was Belinda, the spa
Oh,
Belinda.
the spa manager. So
yes.
her character sort of gets screwed at the end because she got her hopes up with this new business proposition.
Yeah.
That what was the lady's name? Tanya.
I don't know. I just know her as Jennifer Coolidge.
Yeah. What did you guys think about that storyline and Belinda's character?
Yes.
I just wish that the treatment that Belinda was given to Lani and Kai. That's really all I have much. I mean, I loved Belinda's storyline. And so, like, when I saw her storyline, I was like, they could have fleshed Kai and Lani the same way. And that's really what I have most of my beef with that.
Have you got any beefs, Lani?
Yes. So that storyline made me really sad because I think Tanya's character was a shining example of white saviorism. When someone who is white feels good when they try to save a person of color. And so when Tanya and Belinda got to know each other, Tanya, benefited from feeling like she was helping Belinda, getting her excited about a potential business partnership. But then, Tanya having the privilege to be able to be like, nah, like I have an out here. And she then leaves Belinda thinking, oh, I'm going to do all these amazing things. And now it was all lies. It was all just to feed the white saviorism that makes Tanya feel good and gives her personal fulfillment. And so I think it's interesting because it's just another example of, people of color constantly being taken advantage of, exploited. And no, Belinda was not Pacifica, but I think that her character was symbolic of someone who is local to the islands, who's a person of color who is not Pacifica, and just another way to tell the white privilege story overall. And so that is what I think about it. Is I have empathy as, Belinda being Black and being a part of the Black community. It's, just person of color communities all together going through similar situations in reaction to white privilege. That's what I think.
Oh, cool. No, that's cool. Yeah. So, what will your advice be to people who are interested in this topic, who have thoughts when they watch The White Lotus, and what would your advice be for people, for Pacifica people, watching future movies or TV about Hawaii or any indigenous cultures?
Yeah. I always say the first step is always education. And so I will shout out one book that really helped me educate myself specifically on cultural possession through whiteness and how the Pacifica communities have a long-standing history of being possessed and objectified through whiteness, through European and European American culture. And that's the book Possessing Polynesians by an academic, Maile Arvin. It's the science of settler colonial whiteness in Hawaii and Oceania. I highly recommend this book. It's a thick read, but it is the education that really helped me understand from an academic standpoint, a historical standpoint, why these inaccuracies in entertainment with our culture are happening. Taking emotion out of it and really just understanding the facts. So I recommend education if you're Pacifica and you want to learn more, especially around the impact of colonization on the South Pacific Islands. There's so much learning I'm still doing on a day-to-day basis for that. And then for those who are outside of the Pacifica community, really understanding the differences between cultural appreciation, appropriation, and exploitation, and doing culture checks. And this goes for people outside of our community who work at studios, those who are just entertainment fans, and asking yourself and being critical, was this culture appreciated in the show or film? So was it, and by appreciation, was there credit? Was it being told with cultural accuracy? Was the story being told by people who can represent that culture? That's appreciation. Then there's appropriation. That's when you tell another culture's story and you just don't credit it. You see it like a lot in fashion as well, cultural appropriation, where it's just taking a culture and then just doing whatever you want with it and not crediting it. And so is this show or film appropriating a culture by not giving credit? And then the third is exploitation, which I define as you taking from a culture and benefiting it and benefiting in some way. So that could be money. So you made money off of it. It could be free labor, which ties into money. And it could be personal fulfillment, which is why, to me, Hawaiian themed parties and luau themed parties not thrown by Hawaiians is cultural exploitation because you're gaining some sort of personal fulfillment from it. And so that's the third culture check I'd recommend for people outside of our community to do is, am I benefiting from this culture in a way that it is not only not giving credit, but it is disrespecting the other culture. And I'm not keeping in mind what that culture is thinking and feeling and what's accurate. So yeah, those are some actionable things that we can do as part of this larger movement that we're all a part of, especially around the social justice awakening over the past year, 5 years, 10 years, is around decolonizing our minds overall. So a few actionable things we can do, education and then culture checks.
Oh, cool. I will definitely check out that book. Is it on Audible? Because I've been listening to my books these days.
That's the best
Yeah,
one.
I think you can get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't know if it's an audiobook yet, because it's an academic thick read, very educational. It's almost like a school textbook, but so it took me a while to get through it. But I know you can purchase it online.
Cool. No, thanks for that. Aynsley, have you got any advice for people to watch? What to look out for when specific movies
Yeah,
come out
so
or
like
TV?
everything Lani said is like freaking amazing. Like I said, she always has it laid out for us very very well. I would say like speak up. Like I love it when we all are collectively talking together and like our voices join. I think that too often our islands have been divided, you know, and something that I hope we all start doing more is like here in the States, Hawaii's like our back door. Obviously we also have American Samoa, but like we have Hawaii, and like I just feel like if we all come together collectively, I don't care, Samoan, Tongan, Maori, Hawaiian, like all come together to work to make sure that our voices are heard, there's nothing better that we can do. And I think speaking up and educating yourself, like Lani said, is vital. And educating yourself on the different islands. I think that's what like y'all in the South Pacific do amazing, is that you guys have so much education around the different islands. Like, I wish I knew more about like the Cook Islands or more about Fiji. When we learn more about our islands together, we're able to help aid each other more, if that makes sense. And I had another thought and now it just like left me. But my biggest thing has always been like speaking up, and it's never too late to speak up. Like, never too late. So I say, like, if you feel like the White Lotus, oh, it came out in July, can I really speak on this? Hell yeah. Because you know what? That's not even going to be the last one that they do. There's going to be more, and I think we're going to all have to educate those around us. Like, if you are in, I'm here in Tennessee, I'm in Nashville, so I'm doing as much as I possibly can to the people that are in my circle and beyond to educate them on the Pacifica culture. And so, like, the more we can get our voices out there, the more people we can talk to, the better this narrative will be. And also, y'all, some of these writers don't even have that many followers. So freaking write to them, DM them, create a post. Like, if we need our voices to be heard, especially here in the States where a lot of these filmmakers are at, let them freaking know. Because before you know it, we're finally going to be in that writer's room. And if we're not in the writer's room, we're going to create that writer's room. That's what Lani's doing. That's what people in Australia are doing. They're not going to let us be a part of the table. Don't worry, we're going to build our own damn table. So build that damn table, and you'll be great. That's what another thing is. Stop waiting for a seat. Just stop. Just go. And we have seen it before. Our ancestors did it. The Mau movement, especially in the Samoan history, they didn't wait around. They literally took up and was running a movement. So there's no need to wait for a seat at that table. It's already congested. Let's build our own damn table and then put our tables together and create a movement. Because y'all, we are gorgeous and our stories are amazing, and it's always better when it comes from us.
Woo.
Whoa.
And that's the cocoa.
But I just want to thank you guys for coming on Empty Out the Clip and sharing your thoughts on the White Lotus. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will take home a few gems there, here and there, in their book. I'm definitely going to read their book. But thank you guys for coming on the show. Have you guys got any last final words?
I mean, I think Aynsley said it so well. We're just going to build our own table and just support other Pacifica filmmakers, independent filmmakers out there who are telling our stories, because it's not going to come from Disney. It's not going to come from HBO. And HBO, if you're listening right now, me and Aynsley are for hire to write Kai's story, a part 2 of the White Lotus.
Yes, we are.
We're here. We'll take that check. But yeah, sometimes you just got to do it yourself. And so I think that's a great way to end it.
Yeah, I mean, build your own table and invite people to that table from our community. I think too long we're all trying to be the better person. We're going to everybody's going to build their own table, but don't forget to share with each other. And don't forget to bring the next generation along with you. Because the colonizer wants to divide us. We're not going to let that happen anymore. We're going to help each other. We're going to support each other. And that's what this next generation is all about. No longer are we just going to have one Rock, one KJ Apa, one Ali'i Carvalho. It's going to be all of us. And so that's what I hope people hear is build your table, invite them, and then teach the next generation.
So important. There's infinite room at the table. Infinite room for all of us.
Thank you, guys. Oh, you guys going to have another live, I hear, soon? So where can everybody tune into that?
Yes. So I'm not sure when this will be released, but Aynsley and I will be doing a live on this Sunday, which will be Monday in New Zealand. We don't have a time yet, but make sure you follow us at Sippingkoko which is Aynsley, if you don't already. And then my handle's at Lani Tuitasi, LaniTuitasi, and we'll be announcing the time that we're doing our IG Live, which is going to be all about Disney Plus's Doogie Kame Aloha.
Oh, we got thoughts, y'all. We got thoughts.
We got
Let me
so
tell
many
you,
thoughts.
I have so many.
Yeah, we got Coco to spill, so tune into that this Sunday.
Cool. Appreciate your time, ladies. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cam. All right, peace, y'all.